TIFU by trying to impress my crush at the gym, and accidentally injuring myself in front of a crowd. So this happened a few days ago, and I still can't believe the series of events that led to my complete humiliation. I'm the kind of guy who's always tried to be low-key, avoid being the center of attention, but when it comes to my crush, I guess I let my usual self go out the window and tried to be someone I wasn't. What could possibly go wrong, right? Let me set the scene. I'm a regular at the gym, but I'm not exactly a bodybuilder. I go there to keep in shape and to stay active. I've never been the type to lift really heavy weights or show off, but my gym crush, let's call her Sarah, has been working out at the same gym for a while now. She's everything you'd expect, tall, athletic, with a ton of energy. I've noticed her doing squats, deadlifts, and all sorts of intense exercises, and I've always admired her dedication. I've never really had the courage to talk to her, but she's smiled at me a couple of times when we crossed paths, which I took as a sign that maybe she was interested. One fateful afternoon, I was finishing up a set of bench presses when I saw Sarah setting up for some squats at the squat rack right next to me. This was my chance. I figured that maybe if I went for a max squat, something impressive, it could catch her attention. You should know that I don't normally do squats. I mean, I know the basics, but it's not something I have a ton of experience with. I'd probably lifted the barbell a few times before, but I had never actually gone for a personal best. However, seeing Sarah set up for squats, I thought, why not? I can totally do this. So, I went over to the rack, adjusted the weights, and decided to load up more than I'd ever done before. I didn't have a spotter, but I thought, it's fine, I've watched a ton of YouTube videos on proper squat form. I've got this. As I looked around, I noticed that there were a few people in the gym watching the area where I was. Sarah was definitely aware of my presence. She glanced over a couple of times as she was setting up her barbell. It was then that I felt the pressure. This was my moment. If I could nail this squat, Sarah would be impressed. I took a deep breath, rolled my shoulders back, and grabbed the barbell. I unracked it and immediately felt the weight. It was a lot heavier than I had anticipated, but I wasn't about to back down. I can do this, I told myself. I started my descent into the squat, keeping my chest up, focusing on my form. Everything was going great for the first few inches, but then, as I reached the halfway point, I realized I wasn't going to make it back up. The weight felt like it was getting heavier by the second, and I started to panic. My legs were shaking, and my knees began to buckle slightly. At that moment, everything seemed to slow down. I tried to push through, but I was completely stuck in the bottom of the squat. I couldn't push back up. My arms were trembling, and I could feel my lower back starting to strain under the weight. It was like my body was betraying me. I looked around for help, but no one seemed to be noticing. They were all too busy minding their own business. I had two options: either I could attempt to push through, or I could accept that I was about to fail spectacularly. I didn't want to drop the barbell, but I was also aware of how dangerous it would be to keep trying. So, I started to panic and tried to lift the barbell up off my shoulders. As I did that, I lost my balance and suddenly felt the weight shifting. It was then that I made the worst decision of the day. I tried to push the barbell upward while simultaneously trying to step back. My legs couldn't handle the pressure, and in a split second, I lost my footing completely. Before I knew it, the barbell came crashing down onto my back. The sound was loud and horrifying. The impact was enough to make my legs buckle beneath me as I collapsed to the floor with the bar still awkwardly on my back. I couldn't breathe for a second and was gasping for air. My legs were shaking uncontrollably, and I was trying to figure out how I could get this massive barbell off me. Luckily, the safety pins on the squat rack prevented the barbell from coming crashing down completely, but it was still pinned against me, and I was stuck. The worst part? As I was struggling to get the barbell off of me, I heard laughter. It wasn't just one person, it was a group of people who had gathered to watch my spectacular failure. One of them even said, "Nice try, buddy, but maybe don't go for a max without knowing your limits." I wanted to die right there. Sarah, the one person I had been trying to impress, was standing at the other end of the gym, completely oblivious to what had just happened. She had been focused on her own workout and hadn't seen my catastrophic attempt to gain her attention. It took a couple of people to help me get the barbell off my back, and by the time I finally stood up, my legs felt like jelly. I was completely humiliated. Not only had I tried to lift too much, but I had failed in the worst way possible, stuck, helpless, and laughed at by strangers. I walked off to the locker room, my face red with embarrassment, and spent the next 20 minutes sitting in a corner, trying to recover some shred of dignity. To make matters worse, I later found out that Sarah had actually left the gym a few minutes before the incident. So, I spent all that time and effort trying to impress her, only to end up making a complete fool of myself in front of a bunch of random strangers. My gym pride was absolutely shattered. The only thing I learned from the experience is to never try to impress anyone by doing something you're not ready for, and maybe just stick to the machines that are a little less likely to make you look like a fool. TLDR, tried to impress my crush at the gym by maxing out on squats, ended up getting stuck under the barbell and laughed at by strangers. She didn't even see it happen. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. TIFU by accidentally getting my boss arrested for something I didn't do so. This is a story of how I, 22, male, completely ruined my boss's life in a single afternoon. I still can't believe it all went down the way it did. In hindsight, it's honestly so absurd that it's almost funny, except that it's not funny at all. I just can't stop thinking about it, and now it's time to confess to the internet. Let's set the scene. I had just started working as an intern at a marketing firm. It was a small company with a tight-knit group of people, and my boss, Dave, late 30s, was a nice enough guy, but a bit of a mess. He was always stressed out, overwhelmed with work, and borderline obsessed with his job. You know the type. Anyway, I was new, trying to impress him and everyone else, and for the most part, things were going pretty smoothly. It all started last Tuesday. The office was gearing up for a big client meeting, which, to be honest, was the kind of thing that could either make or break us. We had a huge presentation to prepare, and Dave was practically pulling his hair out trying to get everything in order. I, being the enthusiastic intern, was doing whatever I could to help. In the midst of all the chaos, Dave suddenly had a brilliant idea. He decided that he needed to go buy some extra supplies for the presentation. He asked me if I could run to the store and grab a few things. Of course, I was more than happy to help. I'm just the intern, after all, right? So, I grabbed my jacket, hopped in my car, and drove to the nearest office supply store. Here's where things start to go sideways. As I walked into the store, I made a list of everything Dave needed me to grab. I wandered the aisles, picking up notebooks, pens, highlighters, and a few other odds and ends. It wasn't exactly the most thrilling task, but hey, I was getting paid for it. I'm standing in line at the register, ready to check out, when my phone buzzes. It's a message from Dave. Hey, can you also grab a few more of those big whiteboards? We might need them for the meeting. Just grab 2 of the large ones, please. I quickly glance over at the whiteboard section. There are a few options, but the large ones are in the back, and I'm running short on time. I grab 2 of them, get back in line, and pay for everything. No big deal. I get back to the office about 20 minutes later. As soon as I walk in, I notice something strange. There are a few police cars parked outside, and I can hear voices inside the office. My heart skips a beat. What the hell is going on? I walk in, and the first thing I hear is Dave arguing with a police officer. Apparently, someone called the cops on the office, claiming that there had been a suspicious purchase made using a stolen company credit card. I'm standing there, still processing this, when I realize the police are eyeing the items I just bought. And I'm like, wait, what? It turns out that the police were investigating a potential credit card fraud situation. Dave had, a few days ago, reported that someone had used the company's credit card for a bunch of unauthorized purchases. And now, with everything happening so fast, the cops were going through the office looking for clues. When they saw the whiteboards I had bought, plus a few other supplies that looked out of place, they immediately jumped to the conclusion that I, the intern, had been involved in some shady dealings. You have to understand, this was literally the last thing I could have imagined happening. I thought I was doing a solid for my stressed-out boss by running to the store. Instead, I had unwittingly put myself right in the middle of a criminal investigation. What happened next? Well, things escalated pretty quickly. The officer asked me for my receipt, which I gave him. After inspecting it, he told me that the whiteboards I'd purchased were suspiciously high-priced for the ones that were supposed to be at the store. In a panic, I tried to explain that I just grabbed whatever was available because I didn't want to waste any time. But the officer didn't seem to care. He told me that the specific model I bought had recently been flagged by the store as being linked to a scam, and that they had been marked as questionable by their inventory system. I was floored. How could a whiteboard be flagged for fraud? I could see the officers whispering to each other. One of them stepped forward and said, "We're going to need to ask you to come with us. We've already informed your boss that there might be a connection to stolen property." At that point, I started to feel nauseous. I had no idea what was going on, and here I was, standing in front of a room full of police officers, holding a receipt for office supplies that had somehow been linked to a major fraud investigation. As I was about to be escorted outside, Dave suddenly stepped in and started arguing with the officers. He seemed really flustered but was trying to keep his cool. He told them that I was just an intern and had no involvement in whatever was going on with the credit card fraud. But it was too late. The damage was already done. Long story short, after an agonizing 90 minutes of back and forth with the police, they eventually released me, but not without doing a thorough investigation. It turns out that the credit card fraud had nothing to do with me at all. However, because of the suspicious whiteboards I bought, and the fact that they matched items in the scammer's inventory, they were temporarily confiscated as evidence. I left the office that day, heart pounding and stomach in knots, and my boss's Dave was left to pick up the pieces. The police told us that they'd keep investigating, and I was free to go, but that the case was still open. For the next few days, I kept replaying the entire sequence of events in my mind, trying to figure out how I'd screwed everything up so badly. When I got back into the office on Thursday, things were a bit awkward. Dave still seemed on edge, and while no one directly blamed me, I could tell that they all thought I had messed things up. I felt terrible for putting him in that position, especially since the fraud was never actually linked to me. I had just made the mistake of grabbing the wrong whiteboards. That Friday, after a couple of days of uncomfortable silence, Dave finally came over to me. He apologized for how everything had gone down, telling me that he should have double-checked the supplies I was getting before sending me out. We laughed about the absurdity of the whole thing, and he said I could make up for it by getting him coffee for the rest of the week. I still feel weird about it. I genuinely thought I was helping out, but instead, I may have ruined Dave's reputation at the company and put myself on the police's radar for no reason. In the end, I'm not sure if I'll be able to stay at the company. The whole experience has made me question my future in this field. But hey, at least I'll never forget the day I got my boss arrested, by accident. Please don't let your boss send you to buy office supplies. Trust me. It's not worth it. It all started with an innocent trip to the grocery store. My girlfriend and I were getting ready to host a dinner party for some of our closest friends, and I had volunteered to pick up a few last-minute items. I'd been in charge of the main course, steak, and she was handling the sides. So, off I went, the most mundane of errands, or so I thought. The grocery store was just a few minutes from our apartment, so I figured I could knock it out quickly. I grabbed my shopping list, which my girlfriend had thoughtfully made for me, and headed inside. It was your average Thursday afternoon, slightly crowded but not unbearable. I went through the aisles like I knew what I was doing, picking up vegetables, some spices, a bottle of wine, because why not, and a few other odds and ends. The problem started when I got to the meat section. I had called my girlfriend earlier to double-check the cut of beef we needed for the steaks. She had said, get ribeye, but make sure it's fresh. The butcher knows what's good. That's all the information I had, so I confidently approached the meat counter, ready to look like a pro. The butcher, a middle-aged man with a graying beard and a no-nonsense attitude, stood behind the counter, slicing through cuts of meat like he was born to do it. He glanced up as I approached, and I immediately felt a little out of my depth. I was used to ordering pre-packaged steaks, not talking to an actual butcher. Hey, I need some ribeye steaks, I said, trying to sound casual. He raised an eyebrow, a silent question hanging in the air. I stared back, unsure of what he was waiting for. What kind of cut?" he asked, his voice thick with a bit of impatience. I blinked. "I don't know, just ribeye?" He sighed, clearly sensing that I was out of my element. "You want bone-in or boneless?" he asked, clearly expecting me to know the difference. I froze for a moment. Bone-in? Boneless? What did that even mean? I was sure I had heard these terms before, but they didn't really register. Ribeye was ribeye, right? Bone-in? I said, hoping that sounded right. He didn't respond immediately but instead turned and began slicing into a large hunk of meat, expertly separating the bone from the ribeye portion. "How thick do you want 'em?" he asked. This question caught me off guard. Thicker or thinner? How thick should a steak even be? I imagined myself holding a steak and taking a bite, and my brain started to spiral. I needed to make a decision, but all of a sudden, I wasn't sure what I even liked. Maybe an inch? I said, unsure but hoping it would suffice. He gave me a small nod and began cutting. I watched as he skillfully prepared the steaks, my confidence growing with each precise slice. By the time he was done, I had 4 beautiful-looking ribeye steaks in front of me. I felt a surge of pride. Look at me, I was handling this like a pro. He wrapped them up in butcher paper and handed them to me with a look that said, "Good luck, kid." "Thanks," I muttered, taking the package and feeling like I was holding a rare treasure. I was ready to head home. I paid for the steaks and other items, stuffed everything into the car, and drove back to our apartment, eager to get home and start cooking. As I was unloading the groceries, I noticed something odd. The butcher paper was a little heavier than I expected, and it felt like there was something extra. I unwrapped the package to find that the butcher had given me 4 huge slabs of meat, but the cuts were much, much thicker than I had asked for. I stared at the steaks in horror. These weren't just thick, they were ridiculously thick. Each one was at least 2 inches thick, if not more. There was no way I could cook them in time for the dinner party. The cooking time would be astronomical, and I didn't even know if I had the right equipment to cook such massive steaks. I looked at the steaks, then back at the clock. The party was in less than 2 hours. Panicked, I called my girlfriend, who answered on the second ring. "Hey, so. I think I messed up," I said, trying to sound calm but clearly failing. "What happened?" she asked, a touch of concern in her voice. "I asked for ribeye steaks. The butcher gave me really thick ones. Like 2 inches thick. Do you think I can still cook these in time?" There was a long pause. "Wait, 2 inches? That's insane. I asked for regular steaks." "What did you tell him?" I explained the whole situation, and she sighed. "Well, we're not going to get any more steaks now, so we'll just have to work with what we've got. Maybe we can use the oven to roast them slow? We'll just have to cook them on a low heat, and I can help when I get home." I nodded, feeling a little better but still overwhelmed. I wasn't sure how to salvage this, but I wasn't ready to disappoint her or our guests. I decided to go for it. I preheated the oven to a low 300 degrees Fahrenheit, seasoned the steaks generously, and hoped that the slow cooking would work. After about 45 minutes, I checked on them and they seemed to be cooking well, though I wasn't sure if they were done in the center. I cranked the heat up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, trying to get a nice sear on the outside, but of course, that made the steaks cook unevenly. When my girlfriend arrived home, she looked at the steaks with a mix of concern and amusement. "Wow," she said. "Those are definitely thick. But they'll be fine. Just cut them smaller when you serve them." I did my best to cut the steaks into smaller pieces, but the texture was all wrong. The center was undercooked, the outer parts were charred, and no matter how much I tried to fix them, they were just ruined. I ended up trying to serve them anyway, hoping that maybe the guests wouldn't notice. When our friends arrived, they all took a bite of the steak and, to my horror, their faces immediately contorted. It was a mess, dry on the outside, raw on the inside, and far too tough to chew properly. One friend made a joke about it, but the damage was done. The meal was a disaster, and I could feel my girlfriend's disappointment without even looking at her. That night, we ended up ordering pizza. As we sat around the table, eating our backup meal, I couldn't help but laugh at how horribly I had messed everything up. My overconfidence at the butcher counter had led to this embarrassing disaster, and it was clear that I'd learned a valuable lesson: never trust myself to handle a butcher's counter order again. I'm just thankful that our friends were cool about it, and we all ended up having a good time despite the disaster. But yeah, that was the most embarrassing grocery trip of my life. TIFU by accidentally setting my friend's kitchen on fire, while trying to impress her with my cooking skills. A little background: I'm a 24-year-old guy who's always been pretty confident in the kitchen. I've never been a pro or anything, but I can cook a decent meal. My friend Jessica, who I've known since high school, has been talking about how much she loves cooking shows and how she's always wanted to be a better cook. I thought it'd be a great idea to invite her over for a cooking night, where I'd make a delicious homemade meal, teach her some cooking techniques, and just have a good time. So, I spent the whole day getting ready. I had a vision in my head of this perfect night where everything would go smoothly. I decided I'd cook a 3-course meal, an appetizer of bruschetta, a main course of chicken marsala, and a chocolate lava cake for dessert. I had never made the lava cake before, but I figured it'd be a fun challenge. How hard could it be? Jessica showed up around 7 p.m., and I was already prepping the bruschetta. Everything was going well, or so I thought. I was chopping tomatoes, garlic, and basil like a pro, and I even had some fancy olive oil I picked up from an upscale store. I was feeling pretty damn proud of myself. Jessica seemed impressed, too. She was taking pictures of the food, saying how I could totally be a food blogger. Of course, this only made my ego grow bigger. Then came the chicken marsala. I've made it a couple of times before, so I figured it would be a piece of cake. I was browning the chicken breasts, then added in the mushrooms, the wine, and the broth. I tossed in some seasoning and let everything simmer. By now, I was juggling multiple tasks at once, stirring the sauce, chopping more herbs, and keeping an eye on the bruschetta, which was in the oven. That's when I decided to start on the chocolate lava cakes. I found the recipe online, and it seemed simple enough: mix together chocolate, butter, sugar, eggs, and flour, and then bake in a muffin tin for around 12 minutes. As a final touch, I'd put a piece of chocolate in the center, so it would melt and ooze out when you cut into it. Perfect. This was going to be amazing. I made the batter, greased the muffin tin, and popped it in the oven. The timing was tight, but I figured I could manage it. It was all coming together. Here's where things went south. I was getting distracted by Jessica asking me all these questions about the cooking process, and I think I just lost track of time. The chicken marsala was simmering nicely, the bruschetta was ready to be plated, and the lava cakes had been in the oven for almost 10 minutes. The recipe said they should bake for 12 minutes, so I decided to check on them. As soon as I opened the oven, I was hit by this strong, burning smell. My heart dropped into my stomach. The lava cakes weren't just baking, they were smoking. I quickly opened the oven door all the way, and that's when I saw it. The muffin tin was almost completely black. The batter had overflowed, and the entire bottom of the oven was covered in what could only be described as a black, smoking disaster. The cakes had overflowed, burned to a crisp, and the chocolate had melted out and caught fire in the oven. I panicked. I grabbed the oven mitts and tried to pull the tin out, but as I did, the smoke intensified. It wasn't just a little bit of smoke, it was filling up the entire kitchen. I started coughing, and Jessica was asking if everything was okay. I told her everything was fine and to just stay back. But it was clear this was beyond fine. I rushed to turn off the oven, but as I did, I saw that the fire wasn't just in the muffin tin anymore. It had spread to the oven racks, and now there was actual flames coming from the back of the oven. I did the only thing I could think of and grabbed the fire extinguisher, which I thankfully had in a cupboard above the sink. I aimed the extinguisher at the flames and pulled the trigger. I'll admit, I overcompensated. Instead of a controlled spray, the entire can of foam shot out like a pressure hose, blasting the fire into oblivion. In the process, I accidentally hit the back wall of the kitchen, causing the foam to spread all over the countertops, the stove, and even some of the freshly made bruschetta. The entire kitchen was now covered in foam. Jessica was standing there, wide-eyed, trying to process what had just happened. She was holding her phone and recording everything, because of course, she was. The kitchen was filled with smoke and foam, and I was just standing there, stunned. "Did you just start a fire in your own kitchen?" Jessica asked, a mix of disbelief and amusement in her voice. I didn't know how to respond. The only thing I could do was laugh awkwardly, but the laughter didn't come out quite right. It was more of a nervous, high-pitched chuckle. Jessica, ever the good sport, tried to reassure me. "It's okay, don't worry. It's a funny story for later, right?" She started wiping the foam off her phone screen. "I'm definitely posting this on my Instagram story. This is too good." I quickly tried to salvage what was left of the meal. The chicken marsala was still on the stove, but by now, it had overcooked and the sauce had reduced down to something more resembling a burnt paste. The bruschetta was soggy from the foam, and the lava cakes were completely ruined, not just from the fire but from the foam everywhere. I had officially ruined dinner. We ended up ordering pizza instead, and Jessica kept joking about how my cooking disaster was the highlight of her week. The worst part was that I couldn't even salvage the experience. I tried to laugh it off, but deep down, I felt pretty embarrassed. I had really wanted to impress her with my cooking, and instead, I had given her a story about how I set my kitchen on fire. We cleaned up for the next hour, but the damage was done. The kitchen was a mess, my pride was crushed, and my lava cakes were now a cautionary tale about what happens when you think you can cook something fancy without double-checking the oven. So, yeah. TIFU by trying to impress my friend with my cooking skills and ended up burning my kitchen down in the process. At least she had a good laugh. I'll be sticking to simpler meals from now on. So, to give you a bit of context, I've been living in an apartment in the city for a few years now. It's a great place, affordable, close to work, and I even have a little balcony that faces the park. It's not huge, but it's mine, and I've made it cozy over time. My building's old, so the walls are a bit thin, but generally, it's been pretty quiet, and the neighbors are nice. That was until a few months ago when someone moved in across the hall. At first, I didn't think much of it. The guy was about my age, maybe a year or two older, and he always seemed to be coming and going at odd hours, but I assumed he worked some weird shifts or was just living his life. But after a few weeks, I started noticing something odd. Every time I would pass by his door, I could hear him talking to someone. Not just casual chatter, it was more like full-on conversations with someone who wasn't there. At first, I assumed maybe he was on the phone or having a really animated conversation with a friend. But this went on for hours, sometimes late into the night. I couldn't help but get a little curious. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit intrigued. One evening, I was walking back to my apartment when I overheard the conversation again. It was louder than usual, and I swear I heard my neighbor say something that sounded like, "You need to calm down, I'm not going to do that." I stood there for a few moments, half considering whether I should knock on his door and see if everything was okay. But then I thought, it's not my business. Still, that little conversation kept me up that night, wondering if he was maybe struggling with something or if it was some weird mental health issue. A week later, things took an unexpected turn. I had just gotten home from work and was in the middle of making dinner when I heard a loud knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I opened it, my neighbor was standing there. He looked nervous, his face pale, and he was holding a large duffel bag. "Hey," he said, his voice shaky. "I'm really sorry to bother you, but I think I need some help. Could you let me in for a minute? I don't feel safe." Now, I know what you're thinking, why the heck would I invite a random neighbor into my apartment? But here's the thing, I'm not exactly the best at reading situations, and I didn't want to be rude. Plus, he didn't seem like the type to be dangerous. So, I stepped aside, and he walked in without hesitation. He didn't explain what had happened right away. Instead, he just stood there for a moment, looking around, and then started pacing. I sat down on the couch, unsure of what to say. After a few minutes, he finally spoke up. "There's something wrong in my apartment," he said, his voice trembling. "I keep hearing voices, and it's not normal. I don't know if it's the walls or if I'm losing my mind, but it's been happening for weeks now. It's like they're trying to tell me something." My first thought was that he was clearly stressed. It sounded like he was experiencing some kind of auditory hallucination, and I knew enough to understand that kind of thing could be triggered by stress, lack of sleep, or some sort of mental health issue. But then, he said something that made me freeze. "They told me to bring the bag here," he said, staring at me intently. "They told me to hide it. You're the only one I can trust." Now, I was fully aware that I should probably be thinking of a polite way to ask him to leave. But instead, my curiosity got the best of me. I asked him to open the bag, and to my surprise, he did. Inside was a large stack of what looked like old books, all piled up and wrapped in a thick, dusty cloth. "They told me not to look at it," he said, his voice low, almost whispering. "But I think something's inside. Something bad." I stared at the books for a moment, trying to make sense of what he was saying. But instead of offering any explanation, he just stared at them, his hands trembling. The whole situation was starting to feel stranger and stranger, and I couldn't help but wonder if he was in some sort of trouble, or worse, if he was getting into something dangerous. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to sound as calm as possible. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he just nodded slowly and then walked over to the window. I got the sense that he was trying to figure out what to do next. Suddenly, he turned to me and said, "I can't stay here. They'll find me. They'll know I'm with you." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who's going to find you?" But before he could answer, he grabbed the bag, shoved it into my hands, and bolted for the door. I stood there, frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Then I heard him running down the stairs, and the sound of his footsteps faded into the distance. I was left standing in my apartment, holding this strange, heavy bag. The books inside it seemed to press against the cloth, almost as if they were alive. My mind was racing. Was he really in danger? Was there something inside that bag I wasn't supposed to see? I decided to go ahead and open the bag. I couldn't resist. As I carefully unwrapped the cloth, I found the books to be ancient-looking, with leather covers that had long since worn away. The titles were in languages I couldn't recognize, and the pages were yellowed and fragile. But what struck me the most was the feeling I got when I touched them. There was a sense of weight, like these books held something far beyond what I could understand. Before I could process what was happening, I heard a loud knock at my door. I froze. This time, I didn't open it. Instead, I backed away slowly, setting the bag down on the floor. I turned off the lights, hoping whoever it was would go away. The knock came again, louder this time. "Open up," a voice said from the other side of the door. "We know you have it." I swallowed hard. I didn't know who was at the door, but I knew I had just gotten myself into something much bigger than I ever expected. To this day, I still have the bag of books, and I still don't know what to do with them. My neighbor hasn't been back, and I haven't heard anything strange coming from his apartment. But I can't shake the feeling that whatever it is inside that bag has only just begun. And I have a bad feeling it's only a matter of time before someone comes looking for it, or for me. TIFU by accidentally starting a house fire with a toaster oven. So, I'm the kind of person who gets really obsessed with little things. I'll start a new hobby or project, go all in, and then inevitably lose interest after a few weeks. This is how I found myself with a growing collection of cookbooks, random kitchen gadgets, and a deep-seated belief that I could eventually become a culinary genius. It all started a few months ago when I decided to experiment with baking. I had never baked before, but how hard could it be, right? I had seen a ton of cooking shows, and I'd baked a few cookies when I was a kid. My kitchen was equipped with all the essentials: a good oven, a stand mixer, and a toaster oven that I thought would make the perfect tool for small, easy bakes. I found a recipe for banana bread that looked simple enough. I figured I could whip it up without much effort and impress my friends and family with my newfound baking skills. The recipe called for a loaf pan, some bananas, flour, sugar, eggs, butter, and baking soda. I was excited to get started. My toaster oven was the ideal size for smaller batches, so I opted to use it instead of my full-size oven. Before I go on, I should mention that I'm not the type to read instructions thoroughly, especially when I'm confident I know what I'm doing. I figured, how hard can it be to bake a loaf of banana bread? So, I gathered my ingredients, mixed them together, and poured the batter into the loaf pan. Here's where the first mistake happened. I didn't realize that my toaster oven had a small but crucial flaw. You see, the toaster oven has a dial for temperature settings, and the dial doesn't always align correctly with the actual temperature. So, when I set it to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, it was actually running a bit hotter. But I didn't know that yet. I slid the pan into the toaster oven, closed the door, and set a timer for 45 minutes. I felt pretty proud of myself, a moment of triumph, truly. I cleaned up my kitchen, rinsed some dishes, and waited for the delicious smell of baking banana bread to fill the air. And I waited. And I waited. Around 30 minutes into the baking process, I noticed a faint smell in the air. At first, I thought it was just the bananas getting really ripe. But then the smell started to change. It didn't smell like banana bread at all anymore. It smelled like something was burning. I rushed into the kitchen and immediately spotted the problem. The toaster oven had somehow caught fire. The bread had overflowed from the pan, spilling batter onto the heating elements. I had no idea how it happened, but there it was, a small, but very real, fire burning inside my toaster oven. In a panic, I opened the door to the toaster oven, thinking I could blow out the flames or something. No. I don't know what I was thinking. The fire grew bigger the moment I opened the door, and suddenly I was standing in a cloud of smoke with flames licking the top of the toaster oven. I was totally frozen. For a moment, I just stared at it, unsure of what to do. It felt like time had slowed down, and I couldn't think straight. I'm not a fan of calling emergency services for anything. I've always been the type to just deal with things myself. But the fire was getting worse, and my brain finally snapped me into reality. I grabbed my phone, quickly dialed 911, and said something along the lines of, I think I started a fire in my kitchen. Please help. The dispatcher stayed calm, which was impressive because I was anything but calm. I was standing in my kitchen, with fire growing bigger in the toaster oven, trying to keep my cool. Do not open the oven, the dispatcher instructed. Is the fire contained, or is it spreading? I told her I wasn't sure because the fire was getting higher, and I could feel the heat from where I was standing. She told me to evacuate the house immediately and not to try and fight the fire on my own. As I stepped outside, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I watched as the smoke poured out of the kitchen window. All I could think about was how stupid I felt. A banana bread had turned into a disaster of epic proportions. By the time the fire department arrived, the fire had grown considerably. Luckily, the firemen were able to put it out without too much damage. My kitchen, though, was a total wreck. There was soot everywhere, the toaster oven was completely fried, and the smell of smoke lingered in the air for days. I had to throw out a lot of food because of contamination from the smoke and soot. The firemen didn't seem too impressed by my banana bread attempts. They made a few jokes about how banana bread was supposed to be comforting, not dangerous, but they were kind enough not to make me feel too terrible. What made everything worse was when I had to call my landlord to explain what happened. I wasn't living in an apartment at the time, but I still had to deal with insurance and all of that. My landlord was incredibly understanding, but I could tell he was trying not to laugh when I explained that my toaster oven had caught fire while I was making banana bread. The lesson I learned? Don't try to bake things if you don't know what you're doing. And definitely check the temperature settings on your toaster oven before you start cooking. I'll never look at banana bread the same way again. In the aftermath, I had to get a new toaster oven and go through a whole process of smoke damage cleanup. But the best part of the whole ordeal? My friends and family still talk about the bananas incident at every gathering. I haven't attempted baking since then, and I don't think I'll be trying again anytime soon. Moral of the story: do not trust your toaster oven with delicate matters like banana bread. And if you ever smell something burning in the kitchen, no matter how small, always err on the side of caution. Fire is not something to mess with, especially not over a loaf of banana bread. TIFU by accidentally sending my boss a very inappropriate text meant for my girlfriend. I had never been a big fan of technology, but the last couple of years, I'd gotten fairly accustomed to using my phone for work-related stuff. Texting, emails, Slack messages, you name it, I could handle it. But it was my personal texts that often led to some pretty hilarious disasters. Normally, these were innocent enough, like accidentally sending a message to the wrong group chat or responding to a friend in a tone that seemed more serious than I meant it to be. But this one? This one took the cake. It all started on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, bored out of my mind, waiting for a meeting to start. As usual, I pulled out my phone to check in with my girlfriend, Ellie. We had a pretty fun dynamic. She loved to tease me, and I loved to tease her back. Our text messages usually had a playful vibe, and it often involved a lot of inside jokes and banter that would make other people cringe. Nothing wild, just silly stuff. That day, Ellie had sent me a picture of herself looking absolutely adorable in a new outfit she had bought for a night out. I wanted to send something back that was equally silly and flirtatious, so I typed out a message: "You look so hot in that. You could definitely make me do some very questionable things if you keep sending pics like that." Now, to be fair, this wasn't exactly an unusual message for me to send. Ellie and I liked to joke around like that, and she usually sent equally flirty or teasing responses. But here's the thing: I didn't realize that I had been multitasking. While I was texting her, I was also replying to an email from my boss, David. David had been a bit of a hard-ass recently about our project deadlines. He was constantly on our backs about making sure everything was running smoothly and on time, but I had been doing a great job keeping up with everything. Still, his emails stressed me out. That particular day, he had sent me yet another reminder about the status of a major presentation we were preparing for the company board. "Hey, my name, hope all's well. Can you please send me a progress update on the board presentation? We need to make sure we're on track." In my stress and anxiety about getting that presentation perfect, I quickly typed out a professional but short reply to him. "Got it, David. I'm working on it now. I'll send you an update by the end of the day. Then, I made the rookie mistake of going back to my personal messages to Ellie. Here's where things get tricky. I had both the text to Ellie and the email to David open on the same screen. I guess I wasn't paying enough attention, and when I saw that Ellie had texted me back with something playful, I went to reply. But in my excitement, I completely misclicked. Instead of responding to Ellie, I accidentally tapped the send button on the email to David. At first, I didn't even realize what had happened. I was just casually scrolling through my phone, waiting for Ellie's response when I saw a notification pop up, *message sent to David. It took a few seconds for my brain to process what had just occurred. Then it hit me. I stared at my phone in horror. My hands started shaking, and my stomach dropped. My message to Ellie, the one I had meant to send to my girlfriend, had just been sent to my boss instead. I immediately opened the email, half hoping that somehow the universe would have intervened, that maybe it hadn't gone through, or that my message had been delayed. No such luck. There it was, sitting in David's inbox, crystal clear. You look so hot in that. You could definitely make me do some very questionable things if you keep sending pics like that. I wanted to die. My mind raced, and panic set in. I thought about how to recover from this. Should I call David and apologize? Should I send another email explaining myself? The worst part was that David had been known for his dry, sarcastic sense of humor, but he was also a bit old-fashioned and likely wouldn't appreciate a flirty text intended for my girlfriend, especially since I had worked for him for over 3 years and our relationship was entirely professional. He'd probably fire me on the spot for being so unprofessional, and that's not even considering the embarrassment I'd face in front of the entire office if anyone found out. I sat frozen for a minute, my phone in my hands. I thought about quickly texting David and explaining, but I had no idea what to say. How could I even explain this? There was no good way to make this sound okay. Finally, I decided that the only thing I could do was send him a follow-up email, hoping that maybe he'd just brush it off as some bizarre mistake. I furiously typed out a new message. Hey David, I just realized that my previous message was meant for someone else. My apologies for the confusion. I'm working on the presentation and will send you the update soon. I hit send, hoping that he wouldn't dwell on it. But deep down, I knew I had just dug myself into a massive hole. The seconds felt like hours as I stared at the screen, waiting for a response. When I didn't hear back for a while, I started to feel a little bit better. Maybe, just maybe, he hadn't noticed the weird message or he was too busy to even read it properly. But then, about an hour later, I received a single reply from David. Got it. Just make sure the presentation is ready by Friday. And don't worry about the text, everyone has a weird slip-up every now and then. Just, maybe not next time. I had to read the message at least 5 times before it fully sunk in. Was he joking? Did he actually see the text for what it was? And if he did he really think it was some harmless slip-up? I didn't know what to think. Part of me was relieved that he hadn't fired me, but another part of me was mortified. The rest of the day passed in a blur of awkwardness. Every time I saw David, he would give me this knowing look that made my heart race. Every time I glanced at my phone, I half expected another embarrassing message to come through. But nothing came. Over the next few days, I learned that David was, in fact, a man of his word. He never mentioned the incident again. I did my best to stay focused on my work, but I could tell that my relationship with him had subtly shifted. There was an unspoken understanding between us. He had seen something personal, something I would never want him to see, and yet he chose not to make a big deal of it. Since that day, I've been way more careful with my phone, especially when I'm trying to multitask. The number of times I've double-checked who I'm texting before hitting send is borderline ridiculous now. But at least I'm not fired. And hey, maybe David and I will have a good laugh about it someday in the future, though I hope it doesn't come up at the next company party. TLDR, I accidentally sent my boss a very flirty and inappropriate text meant for my girlfriend. He saw it and thankfully didn't fire me, but I'll never live it down. So this happened about a week ago, and I'm still waking up in a cold sweat about it. For context, I, 32M, work at a mid-sized marketing firm. Fully remote, about 150 employees scattered across the US and Canada, and like most remote companies, we heavily rely on Slack for communication. Now, our Slack workspace has a channel called #watercooler, a casual, company-wide channel where people share memes, recipes, weekend plans, pictures of pets, that kind of thing. Anyway, here's where I massively, cosmically screwed up. My girlfriend, well, ex now, Sarah and I had been together for almost 4 years. We lived together in a decent apartment in Denver. Things had been rocky for a while. We were arguing a lot, mostly about dumb domestic stuff at first, dishes, groceries, chores, but recently it had escalated to bigger issues. Communication. Future plans. Whether we were really still compatible. The day it happened, I had just wrapped up a huge pitch presentation over Zoom. I was exhausted, emotionally frayed, and, most importantly, I had a couple of tabs open I shouldn't have. After the presentation, I had about an hour before my next call. Sarah was off that day and asked if we could have a talk. You know, that talk. I said sure. We sat down at the kitchen table. Now, here's where the comedy of errors begins. I had just gotten a new webcam set up and was playing around with OBS Studio earlier that morning, basically a program for screen recording and live streaming. One of the features I'd been experimenting with was a virtual webcam that lets you project your OBS screen as your webcam input. Why? Because I'd been thinking of making tutorial videos or streaming some video game stuff with friends. Guess what I forgot to turn off before we started talking? You see, at some point during my testing, I had added my OBS virtual camera as an input in Slack. I was curious how it would look and never turned it off. OBS was still running in the background. And since Slack remembers your last camera choice, well, you see where this is going. Apparently, Slack had just rolled out this new feature where if you start a Slack huddle with your video on, and you're in a public channel, it shows a live video preview in the channel's activity feed. You don't have to click it to see it, it just plays a little thumbnail-sized live stream. It even mutes by default unless someone joins. But the video is live. Visible. In real time. To everyone in that channel. And I, my fellow humans, had a Slack huddle open. In the #watercooler channel. With my OBS virtual cam broadcasting everything. So Sarah and I sit down. I'm facing my computer, but I'm not looking at it. She's sitting across from me, facing me. We start talking. Quiet at first. I'm trying to stay calm, she's emotional, there's a lot of I just don't feel seen anymore and you're always checked out. I'm nodding, agreeing, trying to find the words. Then it escalates. Voices raised. She's crying. I'm defensive. I say something dumb about how I've been under a lot of pressure at work and maybe she should cut me some slack. She slams her hand on the table. I flinch. At some point, I think while shouting, I'm not your emotional support animal. She throws her half-full water bottle at the wall behind me. The lid wasn't on tight. Water explodes everywhere, including on my laptop. I yell. She yells back. I say we should take a break. She says we should end it. I, noble idiot that I am, respond with a sarcastic slow clap. Yes, a slow clap. Because I was feeling petty and hurt and like an emotionally repressed sitcom dad. She storms off into the bedroom, slams the door so hard it knocks a picture off the wall. I sit there, staring blankly at the wall, dazed and sad and soaking wet. I look at my laptop. It's still on. And then I see it. The Slack app. Open. On the side monitor. And in the #watercooler channel, dear God, there's a little thumbnail. Of me sitting at the table. looking like a drowned rat, with the words "live" in a tiny red box in the corner. I freeze. Click. Click click click. I open the channel and see the comments. Oh my god, is this real? Wait, what is happening, bro? Turn it off. Are we watching this guy's breakup? Then the emojis. So many emojis. The eyes emoji. The popcorn emoji. The scream face. Someone uploaded a GIF of Michael Scott screaming "new" from The Office. It was pandemonium. Chaos. Utter carnage. I slam the laptop shut like it's cursed. Grab my phone. Frantically DM my team lead, technical issue, just saw, didn't realize, so sorry. No response. I go back on my laptop, after toweling it off, disable the camera, shut down OBS, and crawl into a hole of self-loathing. The worst part? It was live for 13 minutes. 13 whole minutes. Unmuted, it wouldn't have been a disaster. But video? Video was enough. Enough to witness a full-on relationship collapse in real time. At one point someone screen recorded part of it, just my stunned face post water bottle, and posted it in the channel with the caption "mood." My boss eventually messaged me privately. He was kind, actually, said he understood and that these things happen in the world of remote work. Told me to take the rest of the day off. Then HR reached out, mostly to make sure I was okay and to say they'd removed the clip and deactivated my camera default settings. That didn't stop the memes. For days, I was the subject of memes. Someone photoshopped me sitting at the table into The Last Supper. Someone else edited a fake movie poster, *** breakup, live in 4K***, starring sad guy and the water bottle of doom. There were polls like who threw it better, Sarah or Patrick Mahomes? I had to leave the #watercooler channel. Couldn't look at it without my stomach flipping. Sarah moved out 3 days later. We're on civil terms, but it's over for good. My team still treats me the same, but I can tell I'll never fully live this down. Every time I unmute on a Zoom call, someone cracks, still not streaming live, right? I deserve it. I don't think I'll ever open OBS again. Hey, friends. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. So this happened over the past few months, but it finally came to a head last week. For context, I, 32M, work in a medium-sized tech company. You know the type: open office, free snacks, unwritten rule that everyone must have an identity outside of work, even if that means speed knitting or competitive drone racing. I'm not particularly social, but I do my job, smile when required, and I've been there long enough to have earned some clout. Anyway, a few months ago I was going through a rough patch. My girlfriend and I broke up after 3 years, my cat died, and I had a health scare that turned out to be nothing but scared the absolute hell out of me. I didn't talk to anyone about it, not because I was hiding it, but because I'm a bit of a quiet person. Instead, I started journaling during lunch breaks. I'd go up to the roof, it's not locked, technically not for employee use, but whatever, with a little notebook and just write stuff down, random thoughts, observations, quotes that stuck with me. It wasn't anything profound, just mental floss. One day I wrote, "Everything that hurts is trying to teach you something." No idea where I heard it. Maybe a podcast, maybe a dream. But I underlined it twice. And that was it. Or so I thought. 2 days later, I go up to the roof and there's this guy from marketing, Darren, already up there. He sees me and lights up like I'm the Dalai Lama. "Hey man, I didn't know this is where you come. I read what you wrote last time." Turns out I had left my notebook up there, completely by accident. I cringed so hard I nearly turned inside out. I asked for it back, but Darren handed it over like it was holy scripture. That quote hit me, dude. I've been thinking about it all day. Mind if I join you next time? I wanted to say no. I should have said no. But I didn't want to be rude, so I gave a weak shrug and said, sure, I guess. That was my real up. The next day Darren brought his own notebook. The day after that he brought 2 friends. Within a week, I had 5 co-workers meeting me on the roof during lunch for what they were now calling reflection sessions. I had become, against all intentions, some kind of lunchtime guru. They would share their own quotes, ideas, and feelings while looking at me like I had unlocked the meaning of life. I just wanted a quiet place to write about how much I missed my cat. I tried to steer it back toward normalcy, but every time I downplayed it, they doubled down. One afternoon I skipped the session entirely, and the next day I found a folded piece of paper on my desk that said, the teacher appears when the student is ready. The teacher disappears when the student is strong. I almost quit that day. But it got worse. Darren made a Slack channel, #ReflectSpace, and people started posting there regularly. Some of the higher-ups caught wind of it, and since it seemed to boost morale, they encouraged it. HR even reached out to me, asking if I wanted to lead a wellness initiative. I kept trying to explain that I didn't start any of this, but everyone just smiled and nodded like I was being humble. By week 4, someone brought a singing bowl to the roof. I wish I was kidding. Then one of the finance guys, Rita, lovely woman, very into crystals, started referring to me as the quiet flame. She said I radiated wisdom without needing to speak. I don't even know what that means. I'm just introverted and slightly lactose intolerant. When I tried to pull away completely, they interpreted it as a test. I went to eat lunch at my desk and found someone had left a note, even flames retreat into themselves before rising again. I swear to God, I almost threw my monitor out the window. Then came last week. Our CEO, let's call her Veronica, joined us on the roof. Everyone stiffened up like kids in church. I expected her to make some joke about us starting a cult or tell us to go back to our desks. But instead, she said, I've been hearing such positive things. I wanted to experience it myself. Everyone turned to me. I nodded, panicked, and said the first thing that popped into my head, sometimes silence is the loudest answer. There was an audible gasp. Veronica closed her eyes and whispered, powerful. What? The F*******. Then she pulled me aside after and said she wanted me to consider heading up a new company-wide initiative for mindful integration and purposeful productivity. A real title. With a budget. I told her I'd think about it, which in my mind meant absolutely not, but then HR emailed me a full proposal the next morning. They even designed a logo. It was a stylized flame with a notebook behind it. I was trapped in a feel-good prison of my own making. Finally, this past Thursday, I decided to just nuke it. I went up to the roof at 11:30 a.m., half an hour early, and taped a note to the access door, the flame has gone out. Seek your own fire. The rooftop is closed. Then I faked a stomach bug and worked from home for the next 2 days. I came back Monday to find the Slack channel renamed to #kindling, with a new pinned message, even when the fire is gone, the warmth remains. They're still doing the sessions. Without me. Which would be fine, except now they think I transcended. There are rumors that I'm writing a book. Someone told me I'm in the running for a regional wellness award, whatever the hell that means. So now I'm just trying to go back to normal, avoiding eye contact and eating lunch in my car like a fugitive. And that's how I, a very regular guy with no charisma and a tragic dairy sensitivity, accidentally started a corporate cult with nothing but a journal and too much emotional repression. All I wanted was a quiet place to miss my cat. This happened last weekend and I still feel like an idiot. I, who 29M, have been dating my girlfriend Alyssa, 28F, for almost 2 years. Things have been going great, and we've talked about moving in together soon. Her parents live out of state, so I hadn't met them in person yet, just a few video calls and some awkward small talk during holidays. But they were coming to town to visit her, and she invited me to a small dinner at their Airbnb. I offered, like a dumbass, to cook for everyone. Alyssa's parents are big on acts of service and homemade touch-type stuff. Her mom is a retired elementary school teacher with a Pinterest addiction, and her dad is a quiet, intimidating guy who has the energy of someone who could build a canoe with his bare hands and then kill you with it. I wanted to make a good impression. Alyssa warned me they were picky eaters, so I chose a relatively safe menu: garlic butter salmon, lemon asparagus, roasted potatoes, and a homemade cheesecake for dessert. Fancy, but not pretentious. I prepped most of it the night before at my apartment and brought everything to the Airbnb a few hours early to set up. Things started to go sideways almost immediately. First, I realized the Airbnb didn't have half the kitchenware I needed. No mixing bowls, no hand mixer, and the only knife they had was so dull it couldn't even slice the plastic on the salmon. I ran out to a nearby grocery store to grab some essentials, but by the time I got back, I had lost an hour and a half of prep time. Alyssa called to say they were heading over early from their hotel and would be there in 45 minutes. Cue me in panic mode. I tried to multitask: potatoes in the oven, salmon marinating, asparagus waiting to go in last minute. I had the bright idea to make a glaze reduction for the salmon, something I saw in a Bon Appetit video like 3 years ago and definitely didn't remember the actual steps for. I threw together balsamic vinegar, brown sugar, garlic, and a splash of soy sauce into a small saucepan. I turned the heat up to high to get it going faster. While that was bubbling, I decided to whip the cream cheese for the cheesecake. I was doing this by hand with a fork because the Airbnb also didn't have a whisk. While I'm furiously stirring like some idiot Neanderthal trying to invent whipped cream, I hear a strange hissing noise. Then I smell something burning. I turn around and realize the glaze has boiled over and is now basically lava, spilling over the sides and igniting on the gas burner below. Flames. Actual flames. Not huge, but enough to send me into a panic. I yank the pan off the burner and immediately throw a dish towel on the fire. Pro tip: never do that. The towel catches fire instantly. Now I have a flaming rag on top of a flaming burner, and I'm waving my hands like I'm trying to swat the fire into submission. I grab the sprayer nozzle from the sink and try to hose it down. This half works. The flames go out, but now the entire stove area is covered in a sticky, charred, syrupy mess and the kitchen smells like burnt soy sauce and defeat. I'm in the middle of trying to clean up when Alyssa and her parents walk in. Her mom, bless her soul, says "oh my," and runs to open a window. Her dad stares at the scene like he's mentally measuring me for a coffin. Alyssa just closes her eyes and mutters, "Jesus Christ, Nate." I try to explain what happened and apologize, and Alyssa's dad just goes, "Happens to the best of us," which somehow makes me feel worse than if he'd just punched me in the throat. The potatoes are salvageable, but everything else is shot. The salmon smells like scorched soy and shame, and the cheesecake batter still has visible lumps of cream cheese. We end up ordering Thai food and eating it off paper plates while trying to make small talk over the lingering smell of vinegar death. But wait. It gets worse. About 20 minutes after we sit down, we hear a weird gurgling sound coming from the kitchen. I get up to investigate and see the sink is backing up. Apparently, in my panic cleaning, I washed most of the glaze and food bits down the drain, clogging it completely. Black, sludgy water is bubbling up into the sink and dripping onto the floor. I try to grab a bucket, but the Airbnb doesn't have one. Her dad and I end up using a salad bowl to scoop water out of the sink into the toilet like some medieval peasant water brigade. By now it's clear I'm 0 for 3. No dinner, no dessert, and now I've partially flooded their rental. I start apologizing profusely again, and Alyssa's dad just claps me on the back, very hard, and goes, "Son, this is one hell of a first impression. But I'll give you points for effort." Alyssa's mom tries to make me feel better by telling me about the time her husband lit their backyard on fire trying to grill a turkey. He just grunts and says that turkey was worth it. The rest of the evening goes better, somehow. We eat Thai food and drink boxed wine and eventually laugh about the whole thing. Her parents are surprisingly chill, all things considered, but I can tell I'll never live this down. Later that night, Alyssa and I are lying in bed at my apartment, and I say, "I think that went okay, right?" She just stares at the ceiling for a long moment and says, "I love you, but you are never allowed to use a stove in front of my parents again." Fair. And the kicker? The Airbnb host messaged her the next day asking what happened to the stove and why the sink was emitting a vinegar stench. She had to Venmo them $150 for deep cleaning and drain snake services. I offered to pay, of course, and her dad texted me a single word in response, "Accepted." So yeah. TIFU by trying to impress my girlfriend's parents with a home-cooked meal and instead gave them front-row seats to my personal cooking apocalypse. This happened last month, and it still haunts me every time I look at a church or see someone wearing black. So, my girlfriend, well, now ex, but we'll get to that, had been hounding me for months to meet her extended family. We'd been together about a year and things were getting serious, and apparently, her Aunt Norma was the gatekeeper of the family. I didn't even know families had gatekeepers, but according to my girlfriend, if Aunt Norma didn't like you, it didn't matter if Jesus himself vouched for you, you were out. Anyway, I get a text from my girlfriend saying, "Big family gathering Saturday. Dress nice. It's formal." That's all she said. I assumed it was a wedding, or maybe one of those weird formal birthday dinners her family throws sometimes. It didn't really matter, I just knew I had to show up looking decent and not make an ass of myself. Saturday rolls around and I put on a black suit because, formal, right? It's the one suit I own. Classic black, white shirt, skinny tie. You know the look. I drive to the address she texts me and it's at a church. Again, I'm thinking, okay, probably a wedding. I mean, who throws a birthday dinner in a church? But something feels off. There are a lot of older people. A lot. And everyone's kind of subdued, quiet. Not wedding energy. My girlfriend isn't at the door to meet me, so I just sort of awkwardly trail behind a group going in. Inside, there's soft organ music playing and a huge portrait of some old guy on an easel up front. He looks vaguely like he could be her grandpa or something. I think, must be her grandfather's memorial birthday or some family reunion thing. Formal and respectful. So, I sit quietly near the back. 10 minutes in, I realize I'm at a funeral. Full-on, casket in the front, priest speaking softly, sniffles all around funeral. And somehow, I can't find my girlfriend. I scan the crowd and don't see her anywhere, and now I'm too deep in it to leave without looking like a psychopath. So I sit. And sit. For an hour. Listening to stories about Gerald, a man who loved fishing, woodworking, and apparently had an incredible mustache, which I can only assume is the man in the giant photo. Then it gets worse. The priest starts asking if anyone would like to come up and share a few words about Gerald. A long, awkward silence follows. Nobody moves. Then some ancient woman with a lace veil turns in her pew, looks directly at me, and says loudly, "You were his favorite, dear. Say something." The entire church turns and looks at me. Now, I could have said, "I'm sorry, I think there's been a mistake," but in my panicked, socially anxious brain, what came out instead was, "Of course. Of course." Like I was confirming I'd been waiting all day to deliver Gerald's eulogy. So I stand up. Walk to the front of the church. Knees shaking. Palms sweaty. Mom's spaghetti-level nerves. I stand at the podium, glance at Gerald's photo, and say the first things that come to my dumb mouth. Gerald was a man. A great man. He Here I pause for drama, desperately scanning my brain for generic old guy facts. He loved the little things in life. A good cup of coffee. The smell of fresh-cut grass. And of course, I take a gamble here, total blind shot, his family. The crowd nods. Some even smile. Encouraged, I plow forward. I didn't know Gerald as long as some of you did. But the time I spent with him, I swallow, was impactful. He taught me how to slow down. How to appreciate the now. And though he's gone, his lessons live on in us. A lady in the front row starts openly weeping. Someone else claps. So I wrap up, rest easy, Gerald. You earned it. Then I step down to what can only be described as a standing ovation. I sit down, heart pounding, convinced I've pulled off the greatest con of my life. Then I finally see her, my girlfriend, at the very back of the church, jaw on the floor. She rushes over after the service and hisses, "What the hell was that?" I explain. Kind of. I mean, how do you explain that? Turns out, this wasn't her family's event at all, she was at a different church. In a different part of town. She was running late, texting me while driving, great timing, and sent me the wrong address. I had just walked into a completely random stranger's funeral, delivered a heartfelt eulogy for a man I didn't know, and left the grieving family thinking I was Gerald's mysterious, well-spoken protégé. The worst part? She was livid at me for embarrassing her and being so dramatic. I tried to explain I'd just survived a real-life anxiety horror movie, but she wasn't having it. We broke up 2 days later. But wait, it gets weirder. A week after funeral gate, I get a letter in the mail. Handwritten. It's from Gerald's daughter. She somehow tracked me down, I still don't know how, and said my words at the funeral were exactly what the family needed to hear. That it was like Gerald was speaking through me. She even invited me to the wake they're holding this summer at his favorite lake, saying "Your family now." So yeah. I guess I accidentally adopted a dead man's family. On the bright side, Gerald sounded like a great dude. So this happened a few weeks ago and I'm still getting messages about it. Every time my Slack pings, my soul briefly leaves my body. For context, I, 29 work in a medium-sized marketing firm. We're mostly remote, with occasional in-person events. Our boss, Rachel, early 40s, is kind of a legend. She's charismatic, hilarious, and actually cares about her employees. So when it came time for her birthday, the leadership team decided to throw her a surprise Zoom party, and they asked me to host it, since I've got a bit of a rep as the fun one on the team. The plan was simple. We'd get Rachel on a fake client emergency Zoom under the guise of needing her input on a last-minute pitch. Everyone else would already be in the Zoom with party hats, virtual backgrounds, and a custom jingle made by one of the creatives. I was supposed to present the pitch, stall for a few minutes, then say the code phrase, "This campaign's going to blow up," at which point everyone would shout happy birthday, and the confetti filters would fly. Cool, right? Well, it would have been cool. I decided to do a test run the night before. I opened up Zoom, tested my mic, camera, background, and also my OBS setup. I stream games sometimes, so I'm overly techie with my stuff. Everything worked fine. But what I forgot was that I had linked my OBS to my company Slack the previous month for a digital team show and tell event. There was a custom integration we used for broadcasting live events directly into Slack channels so remote employees could watch without needing Zoom. I hadn't disabled it. You see where this is going. The day of the party, I was nervous. I was juggling Zoom, OBS, the confetti overlays, and trying to coordinate messages between the surprise party participants without tipping off Rachel. She joined right on time, looking mildly annoyed, because of course she thought this was about a botched campaign. I launched into a fake presentation full of buzzwords and stock images. Everyone else in the Zoom had their cameras off to maintain the illusion. About 2 minutes in, I said the code phrase, "This campaign's going to blow up." Boom. Everyone unmuted, Cameras came on, shouting "Happy birthday, Rachel," as confetti and balloons rained down on the screen. Rachel's face went from confused to shocked to touched in under 3 seconds. She started laughing, someone played the birthday jingle, and someone else held up a cardboard cutout of her face. It was chaos in the best way. But about 30 seconds in, my Slack started blowing up. At first I thought it was just people reacting in the party planning channel. But then the DMs started rolling in. Bro, are you live on the general channel? Why can I hear happy birthday in Slack? I froze. I alt-tabbed and saw that OBS was still running, and the Slack integration was still live. Meaning, yes, the entire company, all 200+ employees, had been treated to a live stream of what they thought was a private leadership-only meeting. It was being broadcast into the #general channel, pinned to the top. No one had told me the integration had recently been reactivated for a company-wide AMA. And I had not unlinked it. The real kicker? Because I was testing out a voice mod app the night before, I had left it running on my default mic settings. So my presentation was being delivered in a deep British narrator voice, while everyone else sounded normal. To the unknowing viewer, it looked like some kind of surreal marketing cult ritual. The stream ran for a full 8 minutes before I realized what was happening and shut it down. But by then, the damage was done. I checked Slack and there were hundreds of messages reacting in real time. Here are some actual highlights. Why is Barry talking like he's narrating a National Geographic special? What campaign is this? Is this a product launch? I thought this was a pitch meeting. Why is everyone yelling? Is this the metaverse? Rachel thought it was hilarious and loved every second of it. In fact, she told me afterward that it was the best kind of chaos and that she was flattered the whole company got to see how loved she was. But HR was less enthusiastic. I had to fill out a post-incident tech report and sit through a half-hour call where I had to explain how my British AI narrator voice accidentally streamed a surprise birthday Zoom to our Slack feed. One coworker told me it was the best accidental branding event we'd ever had. Someone made a meme of me in front of a confetti explosion with the caption "This campaign's gonna blow up" in bold letters. It spread through our internal channels like wildfire. The cherry on top? A week later, our social team posted a very vague post on LinkedIn about embracing spontaneity and joy in remote workspaces, featuring a photo of Rachel mid-laugh. No one outside the company knew the context, but all of us did. And now, every time I present something, someone inevitably drops into the chat, British narrator voice, "This campaign was about to blow up. I will never live this down." So this happened 2 weeks ago and I'm still piecing my life back together. I live in a duplex with super thin walls. My neighbor, an older lady named Joan, owns a cat named Marbles. Marbles is not a normal cat. Marbles is Satan in a fur coat with a voice like a dying lawnmower. This cat yowls like he's in labor every morning at 4 a.m., hurls himself at doors, and has somehow figured out how to open my screen window from the outside. We are not friends. Now for context, I'd been unemployed for a few months after getting laid off from a tech job. I've been trying to break into something new, remote support, flexible hours, not dealing with people face to face. It's been hard. Bills are adding up. My girlfriend, Hannah, and I live together, and while she's been supportive, it's getting tense. I finally land a virtual interview with a great company. I do all the right things: shave, wear a decent shirt, clean my desk, even tape a post-it over the weird stain on the wall behind me. Interview is at 9 a.m. sharp. I even rehearse answers like a total nerd. It's 8:40. I'm sitting at my desk, sipping coffee, going over notes one last time. I've got 15 minutes to get in the zone. That's when I hear it. Scritch. Scritch scritch. Marbles. The demon has climbed onto my windowsill again. I can see his little gremlin face through the screen. I glare at him. He glares back. He yowls. Loud. Like a kid imitating a dying goose. My noise-canceling mic might help, but not if he gets in. I jump up and close the inner window. I even wedge a book against the screen to keep it shut. Crisis averted. 8:53 a.m. I log in. The recruiter joins. She's nice, upbeat, seems impressed that I showed up early. We chat. It's going well. 9:01 a.m., the hiring manager joins. Serious guy, glasses, clearly doesn't mess around. He asks me to share my screen to walk through a support scenario. I click share. And that's when I hear it again. www, the noise is close. Too close. I look down and see a blur of gray fur sprinting past my legs. Marbles. The little bastard somehow got in when I was getting water earlier. He was hiding in my closet like some kind of chaos goblin. And now he's out, yowling and doing laps around my apartment like it's the Indy 500. I mute myself and try to keep presenting, but I'm sweating bullets. I can hear things crashing behind me. He's knocked over a plant, and now he's clawing at the curtain. My chair jerks a little as he brushes past it. The hiring manager suddenly says, "Is everything all right on your end?" I unmute and blurt, "Sorry. My neighbor's cat got in." He does this sometimes. The guy raises an eyebrow. That a common problem? No. I mean, yes. I mean, he's just very ambitious. The recruiter starts giggling. The manager does not. I try to steer things back. I answer the next question while inching my foot toward Marbles, trying to shoo him away. Instead, he jumps into my lap, stares dead into the webcam, and lets out the most ungodly howl I've ever heard. The recruiter snorts audibly. The manager sighs. I try to laugh it off. He just really wanted to be part of the team. Crickets. We wrap the interview. It's awkward. I know I blew it. I spend the next hour trying to coax Marbles out from under my couch with turkey slices. He eats them and then proceeds to puke on my rug. Now here's where the day gets worse. Hannah comes home from her shift early. She sees the mess, sees me frantically scrubbing cat puke, and asks what happened. I explain. She laughs. Then she sees the email. I hadn't closed my laptop. On the screen, the recruiter had already emailed me. "Thanks for your time today. Unfortunately, we've decided to move forward with another candidate." Hannah stops laughing. She's quiet the rest of the day. That night, we argue. It's not just about the cat, obviously. It's money, stress, feeling stuck. She says she's tired of this apartment, tired of thin walls and feral cats and me making excuses. She sleeps on the couch. I lie awake, listening to Marbles yowl through the wall like he's gloating. The next morning, I decide I've had enough. I go to Joan's door, still in my pajamas, holding the puke-stained towel like a white flag. I'm ready to beg her to keep her demon indoors. Joan opens the door and says, "Oh, thank God, have you seen Marbles? He got out last night and hasn't come home." I blink. He was in my apartment. "Oh, he does that," she says cheerfully. "He's very clever." I want to scream. Instead, I hand her the towel and walk away. The week after, Hannah tells me she's going to stay with her sister for a bit. She packs a bag. We haven't really talked since. And Marbles? He still visits. Last night I caught him trying to drag a sock out through the window crack like a tiny burglar. I've duct-taped every entry point, but he finds a way. Always. I'm still job hunting. Still drinking too much coffee. Still staring into the dead eyes of a cat I did not adopt, who has somehow destroyed my life, one yowl at a time. All I wanted was a remote support job. Instead, I got a feline poltergeist and maybe singlehood. Wish me luck. This happened about a month ago, and I'm still trying to live it down. For context, I, 29M, live in a mid-sized city in the Pacific Northwest. I work in tech, live alone, and generally keep to myself. I don't do anything particularly wild. I recycle. I water my neighbor's plants when she's away. I enjoy oat milk. You get the idea. Anyway, about a month ago, my best friend Jared came to visit from out of town. Jared is the human embodiment of a golden retriever that somehow smokes weed and owns a crypto wallet. He's always down for a little something fun, which is how I ended up in this situation. He brought homemade edibles. Not the kind where your friend makes them and warns you they're strong and you laugh and 30 minutes later you're folding into the void. No, these were legit. Jared had some ridiculous precision dosing process involving coconut oil, lecithin, and a kitchen scale. His weed butter looked like it had a certificate of analysis. He claimed each brownie was exactly 20 milligrams, which, fine, sure, I've had that before. But Jared's math was based on theoretical weed potency. And Jared also thinks sea moss cleanses your soul. I should have known better. We each took a brownie before heading out for a walk. The plan was to hit up the Saturday market downtown and then catch a weird indie movie at this small art house theater nearby. Simple. Harmless. Except about 45 minutes in, while we were in the middle of the market, things began to shift. You know that moment when it hits and the world becomes a Salvador Dali painting, and every sound feels like it has texture? That happened. But I didn't want to alarm Jared, who was happily chatting with a woman selling lavender soap like he was at a spa retreat. I told him I needed to sit down, and he handed me a $6 turmeric lemonade and pointed toward a bench near a group of people sitting in a circle. They looked friendly enough. They were handing out pamphlets and had a sign that said, "Come as you are." Seemed chill. I sat. I vaguely remember someone handing me a flyer. Something about the light within. I assumed it was a meditation group. Or possibly a band. Either way, I nodded politely and took it. I was trying to act normal, which was increasingly difficult because the lemonade was glowing and I had the undeniable sense that my eyebrows were trying to communicate with me in Morse code. Then the woman next to me asked if I wanted to share my light. And because I was high as the Eiffel Tower and trying to blend in, I said, absolutely. Let's share all the light. I must have sounded inspired as hell because suddenly I had everyone's attention. Someone asked if I'd like to speak. Speak. Now, a sober version of me would have laughed and politely declined. Jaime, however, thought, this is my TED Talk. I stood up. I looked out at about 15 very earnest faces. Someone handed me a smooth rock. I assumed it was symbolic. It was. Still have it. I don't fully remember what I said, but according to Jared, who showed up mid-speech and stayed hidden behind a produce stand out of sheer second-hand panic, it went something like this: I think, we are all candles. Right? Like, we can light other candles without losing our own flame. And sometimes, the world is just a gust of wind. Trying to blow you out. But you're a candle with a little hat on. Like a helmet. So you just keep burning, baby. Apparently I talked for a solid 5 minutes about candles, wind, helmets, and the resilience of human wax. People clapped. One person cried. Someone gave me a gluten-free muffin. I bowed. I bowed like I was the Dalai Lama accepting a Tony Award. Jared finally came over, pale and sweating, and whispered, "Bro. We have to go. You just joined a cult." He wasn't entirely wrong. Turns out the group was part of a local spiritual collective that blends bits of Eastern philosophy, homeopathy, crystal healing, and light choreography. I'm not kidding. They literally do interpretive dance under full moons. Later, I found out they recorded everything for their online members. My candle monologue? It got posted. It went mildly viral on their Instagram with captions like "The Flamekeeper speaks truth" and "Wind cannot touch the protected wick." Worse, they tagged me. I didn't even realize they knew my name, but apparently I had told them I was Elias, which is not my name. I have no idea where that came from. I think I tried to say I'm Eli's friend, Jared's middle name is Eli, and they just rolled with Elias. So now, there's a whole group of people in town who believe Elias, the Flamekeeper, is some kind of spiritual beacon. I tried to message them and explain, but the admin replied, "The spirit speaks through you when the mind steps aside. You are always welcome here, Elias." The worst part? They started showing up at places I frequent. The local coffee shop. My gym. One of them left a quartz crystal in my bike basket with a note that said, "May your wick burn eternal." Now Jared thinks it's hilarious. He tells people I'm a messiah. He sends me screenshots of my own face on their website next to vaguely ethereal quotes like, "Surrender the wax, receive the flame." So, yeah. I accidentally became the face of a small spiritual movement because I got too high in public and said some weird things about candles. My coworker asked me yesterday if I'd been doing any more speaking lately. I have no idea how she found out. I live in fear. But my mailbox smells like sage and every once in a while, someone bows at me on the street. I don't do edibles anymore. TIFU by using the wrong group chat to vent about my coworkers, while still on a company retreat with them, so this happened last weekend, and I'm still not sure if I have a job or if I'm going to be banished from professional society entirely. For context, I, 28M, work at a small but rapidly growing marketing agency. We're one of those startup culture places, open office, dogs welcome, lots of Slack channels with ironic emojis. You know the type. Anyway, once a year we do a company-wide retreat where we spend a long weekend at some overpriced lodge in the woods to build culture and do forced team bonding activities that everyone pretends to enjoy. This year, we went to a giant Airbnb in the Catskills. It had a hot tub, fireplaces, and rustic vibes. It also had approximately zero cell reception and spotty Wi-Fi, but we were told it was intentional. Digital detox, our CEO said with a wink. I already knew I was going to hate every second of it. So here's the setup: 32 people, one giant cabin, assigned bunk rooms, one shared kitchen, and nowhere to hide. I'm not exactly antisocial, but being around chirpy, kombucha-fueled coworkers for 72 hours straight is like emotional waterboarding for me. Add to that the fact that I got stuck in a bunk room with Dylan, our hyper-competitive sales guy who refers to himself in third person, and Madison, a relentlessly positive wellness guru who kept trying to get me to do sunrise yoga, and I was hanging on by a thread. By Saturday evening, after surviving a trust fall workshop, a cooking competition judged by our VP, and something called Silent Group Reflection Hour, I was completely fried. Everyone else was in the living room watching an 8th round of karaoke. I faked a stomach ache and snuck into a back corner of the cabin to text my best friend Jenna and another friend from college, Sam. We have a little group chat called Weird But Hot, because long story short, we originally bonded over strange celebrity crushes, Jeff Goldblum in a leather jacket, etc. It's our sacred venting space. I started typing furiously, ranting in full-on mean girls mode. I may have called Dylan a testosterone-soaked golden retriever with the emotional depth of a spoon. Madison got dubbed a crystal-waving cult recruiter. I went off on our VP, calling her a corporate succubus who feeds on unpaid overtime, and then capped it off with an unflattering analysis of our CEO's motivational speech, which included the phrase, "He talks like an Instagram reel that won't load." I even added a selfie with the caption "Kill me," featuring my dead-eyed expression next to a decorative pillow that said "Live, laugh, love." I felt better almost instantly. You know how ranting just releases something? I hit send, locked my phone, and leaned back with the satisfaction of a man who has briefly won. That lasted all of 5 minutes. Because I heard a ping. Then another. Then laughing, and not just any laughing, the specific kind of laughing people do when they've just discovered something they really shouldn't have. I opened my phone and saw the horror. I had not sent that rant to Weird But Hot. I had sent it to the company Slack channel titled #retreat_highlights. Let me repeat. Not a private message. Not even a small team chat. The entire company. Including HR, including the CEO. Including Dylan, Madison, and everyone I had just verbally annihilated in a glorious meltdown of sarcasm and frustration. My soul left my body. Slack, mercifully, allows you to delete messages, but the damage was done. People had already reacted. The eyes emoji. The fire emoji. The cry laugh emoji. Madison replied with a single wow, and a crystal emoji. Dylan just posted a picture of a golden retriever in sunglasses. The VP didn't respond at all. The CEO replied with, "Let's connect after the retreat," smiley face, which, in startup speak, is the kiss of death. I considered running into the woods and letting a bear take me. Instead, I did what any rational adult does in a crisis. I panicked. I tried to backpedal in the chat. I typed something like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, I meant to send that to a friend as a joke, you all know I love this team, haha #team vibes." It was the kind of cringe apology that just makes everything worse. I considered faking a family emergency and leaving early. Then I remembered I had carpooled with Madison. The rest of the night was pure hell. Every time I entered a room, people would quiet down slightly. Conversations shifted when I got close. I caught someone whispering "Crystal Cult Recruiter" and then burst out laughing. A few people actually high-fived me. Jenna, the intended recipient of the rant, texted me "What did you do?" after screenshots began circulating beyond our office. Sunday morning, we did a closing circle where everyone was supposed to share one unexpected joy from the weekend. When it got to me, Dylan leaned over and stage whispered, "Say it was the spoon." I wanted to die. Instead, I muttered something about learning more about my limits. Back at the office Monday, things were weirdly fine. No official repercussions. HR asked if I wanted to talk, and I declined with a firm "I'll just die quietly in this cubicle, thanks." The CEO did pull me aside and said he appreciated the honest feedback and that maybe next year we do optional yoga. The VP hasn't spoken to me since. But the kicker? My unfiltered Slack rant got turned into an inside joke. Someone printed out my Instagram reel that won't load comment and stuck it to the coffee machine. Dylan updated his Slack name to Golden Retriever Energy. And Madison, sweet, relentlessly chipper Madison, gave me a handmade bracelet on Wednesday. It had a tiny spoon charm. So, yeah. I still have my job. But now I'm the guy who roasted his entire company on a corporate channel and lived to tell the tale. Lesson learned, always double-check your group chat. Or better yet, keep the unhinged roast sessions analog. TIFU by accidentally being the reason my neighbor got arrested in a flaming chicken suit during a church fundraiser. It sounds insane. It was insane. And now I have to avoid eye contact with everyone on our street and possibly move. So some background, I live in a relatively quiet suburban neighborhood. Everyone's very friendly HOA, backyard barbecue, dad jokes on lawn day type of vibe. My neighbor gay Jim is that guy in every neighborhood who goes too hard for every event. Halloween? 14-foot skeletons with motion-activated screams. Christmas? Syncs his light show to EDM remixes of Silent Night. 4th of July? Once set his fence on fire with illegal fireworks from Wisconsin. Despite all that, Jim's actually a decent dude. He just has a thirst for spectacle that's, well, unquenchable. And this past weekend, our local church was holding a fundraiser for their new community center. My wife and I volunteered to help. The big attraction was a family fun day with games, food trucks, and a dunk tank. Jim, naturally, volunteered to spice things up by being the dunk tank victim in a full-body chicken costume. He told the pastor he'd be the poultry martyr for the cause. I knew this was going to be a disaster when I saw him wheeling the costume into his garage weeks before. It had feathers, fans, and God help us all a Bluetooth speaker rigged to play chicken sounds and Eye of the Tiger on loop so the day of the event comes. Everyone's setting up, I'm on grill duty, flipping hot dogs and sweating through my khakis, and here comes Jim in full glory, massive yellow and red chicken suit, blaring music, strutting like a man possessed. Kids loved it. Adults cringed. The dunk tank was positioned right next to the pie eating contest, and he was squawking so loud that one of the contestants gagged on a banana cream pie. Now, here's where I messed up. Earlier that morning, I noticed Jim struggling with the power cords for his costume. He had this insane setup, external battery packs, extension cords taped to his thighs, and a USB-powered heating element inside the suit so it feels like a real chicken under pressure. I thought that was dumb as hell, but classic Jim. So when I walked by later and saw his battery pack sitting out in the sun, I jokingly said, "Hey man, if that thing catches fire, just make sure you run around and squawk. It'll double donations." Jim laughed. I laughed. We moved on. Fast forward 2 hours. I'm flipping burgers and someone yells fire. I turn and see a literal ball of flames where the dunk tank used to be. There's panic, kids screaming, water sloshing everywhere, and there, emerging from the chaos, is Jim. On fire. Running. In a goddamn chicken suit. And he's screaming, not in pain, but in character, squawking, flapping his arms, doing circles around the picnic tables. Someone threw a lemonade on him. Someone else tried to beat him with a picnic blanket. The Bluetooth speaker is still playing Eye of the Tiger. It looked like an apocalyptic acid trip version of Rocky II. It turns out the heating element in his suit shorted out, overheated the battery pack, and literally ignited the inner padding. Here's where it gets worse. In his panic, Jim ran onto the street and straight into oncoming traffic. Not like high-speed traffic, this is a suburban area, but enough that a woman in a minivan swerved and hit a mailbox. That mailbox belonged to our local councilman. The police were already there for security, and when they saw a flaming chicken man sprint into the street and cause a minor crash, they tackled him. Hard. They didn't know he was the guy from the dunk tank. They just saw a man on fire and presumed he was on drugs or staging some sort of protest. And Jim, being Jim, refused to break character. They yelled at him to get down and he just screamed "Cluck you," and tried to peck one of them. They tossed him. Yes. The police tossed a man who was already on fire. This only added to the chaos because the taser arc apparently hit the Bluetooth speaker and caused it to explode. It sounded like a goddamn grenade. Kids are crying. Someone's grandma faints. A pie judge goes into an asthma attack. And I am standing there, frozen, holding a half-charred hot dog in one hand and a spatula in the other, watching my neighborhood dissolve into total anarchy because of a joke I made about spontaneous combustion. They finally put him out, got him medical attention, he was fined first-degree burns and singed pride, and took him in for questioning because they thought he'd been trying to sabotage the event. It wasn't until the pastor showed them the volunteer sheet and a photo of Jim smiling in his chicken costume while holding a sign that said "Cluck Cancer" that they let him go. I thought that would be the end of it. No. Jim gets released the next day and tells everyone that I'm the one who predicted the fire and that I may be some kind of suburban prophet. He says this with a grin, but now I've got strangers coming up to me asking if I foresaw the chicken blaze. The pastor jokingly asks me if I want to do a sermon. The HOA president wants to discuss fire safety protocols. My wife won't stop calling me the poultry oracle. And Jim? He's planning to do it again next year. He says he's already designing a fireproof turkey suit for Thanksgiving outreach. I can't win. TIFU by accidentally turning a goofy neighborhood fundraiser into a poultry-themed inferno and getting my neighbor arrested by cops who tackled and tossed a flaming chicken. I don't know if I'll ever live it down. God help me if he follows through with the turkey suit. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.